We are live, coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. What? How the heck does this happen? I have no idea. I have no idea how this happens. Lots of technology, lots of help, lots of volunteers, lots of goodwill. I want to thank Brian Glasgow, first and foremost, for his trust and assistance in pulling this off. Crazy. Brian called me in March and said, Bob, we need you to do the Amusement, the VR Summit again. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, dude. There's a pandemic. I'm in Australia. There's no way we're going to pull this off. And he, through his sheer force of will and influence, he convinced me to do it and then rallied together to give me pretty much everything I asked for to be able to pull this off. I want to thank the AAMA and the AMOA, especially Pete Gustafson, who shared my vision for this thing when we first started. And I want to thank my friend Chris Alba in the room, my partner in Show Up, who without him, there's no way this would be happening. He's volunteering his time and a lot of it and effort and expertise to help us pull off kind of a hybrid event, kind of on the fly. So so fourth annual VR Summit. I think we've got a good program this year. I will tell you, we were challenged. People don't want to travel. I want to thank you guys all for your courage and commitment to being in the room. How good does it feel to actually be together again? I'm jealous a little bit, but maybe IAPA will be able to do hugs. I'm just going to jump right into the agenda. We've got a full agenda. I'm going to give you a state of the industry presentation to talk a little bit about where VR is. And I want to start by thanking our sponsors. Never thought I'd be saying this because I always used to laugh at people that said, we want to thank our sponsors, but there's no way this would be happening without Springboard VR, which is now owned by Vertigo Games. John Coleman, thank you for coming in and supporting this event. I think they're going to be a big part of this going forward. And they're going to be hosting a panel today, sponsoring a panel called VR Arcade 2.0. We're going to be talking about the future of virtual reality in our industry. Matt Wells, Paradrop VR, you'll be hearing from him. He's going to be remoting in from London, from the UK or somewhere in the UK, because he couldn't get permission to travel. And also Sean Griffin, who couldn't be here today because he had a family emergency, and he's going to be remoting in from Boston, I believe. And he's with Nomadic, which are the publishers of Lightsaber Dojo, and he's going to be walking us through what it's like to launch a new VR game in a pandemic and what they've done to be able to actually modify that and take player feedback and turn it into something that they'll be relaunching here at the show, which is really exciting. And so first I want to talk a little bit about market trends. The VR market the gaming market is now exploding. A few years ago, there was this narrative, virtual reality is dead, all these companies that rushed into the VR gaming market before there was hardware in the field kind of pivoted and looked at location-based VR and said, oh, wow, there's money over there. And people are buying tickets to play VR games. And so a lot of the industry kind of shifted over into our market for a while. Now, all of a sudden, we're starting to see hardware sales in the home, thanks to Oculus Quest, which we'll talk about in a second, really exploding. And that is due to the Quest, really. Quest 2 was kind of the iPhone moment for virtual reality. And if you look at the statistics, this isn't Quest headsets. This is Steam. For those of you who know, Steam is kind of an online gaming portal where people connect their VR headsets if they want to play VR on a PC, which is where the higher end gaming things happen. And you can just see it growing in the last couple of years. It took 41 months to get to 1 million connected units. Then the next 11 months, it went to 3 million units. And this last year, we've seen 110% year-on-year growth. And if we learned anything about growth during COVID, it's this notion of exponential growth and an R factor. And so when I take that previous slide and I figure out the R factor, it's 0.9986. And when I extrapolate that out from where we are now in kind of mid 2020, 2021 out to 2025, you'll see that if that growth curve holds, we're talking about 80 million headsets in the next 5 years, which is a lot. And it's not out of the question that this happens. There we go. So this is smartphone growth after the launch of the iPhone. And a lot of people are calling the Quest 2 the VR's iPhone moment. So the iPhone launched in 2007 after meager smartphone growth went from 2% to 3%. iPhone launched, doubled in a year, then it doubled again. And then over 5 years, it got to 65% market penetration. So this explosion of exponential growth because we had the right product in the right market at the right time. And we know that gaming platforms change about every 10 or 15 years. There's a massive shift, right? So we went from arcade games to console PC games kind of in the 90s. And then we went to mobile. Mobile really exploded. That purple graph is mobile. That really exploded. And now you're starting to see VR come, and VR is the next gaming platform. Believe it or not, you don't have to believe it at your own peril. John Riccitiello, who is the CEO of Unity and who is the former CEO of Electronic Arts, so he knows a little bit about the gaming industry. He just last week in an interview with the Information website, highly recommended, by the way, he said, by the end of this decade, use of VR devices will be at about the same level it is for game consoles. And game consoles, I think we're talking about 250 million game consoles right now in the market. And so by the end of 2030, by the end of this decade, we're highly likely to see VR as the next consumer gaming platform. Now, it's being driven by Facebook. Facebook is pushing, they own Oculus, for those of you that don't know that, and they're pushing it into the market, and Facebook continues to grow, right? So Mark Zuckerberg famously a couple of years ago said, we want to see 1 billion people in virtual reality. That's our goal. Won't talk about why that is in this. That's a whole nother conversation. But Facebook keeps growing, and they've got almost 3 billion global monthly active users. That means once a month, 3 billion people at least log in to Facebook. And what does that mean? So that means the Quest, they're testing advertising this month too, by the way, in the Quest. And there was some pushback, so they're going to pull that back a little bit and soft roll it. But ultimately, they know how engaging and addictive VR can be. And so they're subsidizing the hardware cost like telecom providers did with the early iPhones, right? They brought the price of that thing down after it launched, and it penetrated the market. And so Facebook is using their cash coffers and their billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in profit to bring the cost of the Quest headset down so they can sell it for $299, which seems to be the sweet spot on price. There's also this really profitable ecosystem that's developing around content and games, which is why we're seeing companies that kind of came into our space and sniffed around a little bit. Now all of a sudden they're looking at, the consumer market's heating up. 60 Quest games have made over $1 million since 2020. 6 have made over $10 million. The Walking Dead did $30 million. And Beat Saber, which most of you are familiar with, has done over $40 million in downloaded song packs alone. And we're seeing AAA content from big studios come in now. Ubisoft has announced Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell are coming to virtual reality. Medal of Honor, which is one of EA's big game franchise, came to the Oculus Quest this year. And Capcom just announced they're going to re-release Resident Evil in VR, which will be terrifying. And we've seen this, right? I mean, I've been around long enough now to have seen these trends, and the future is a good predictor of the past. And so in the 80s, we had CRT televisions, and we built those into arcade game cabinets. And then all of a sudden, we had rear projection screens, and that gave us more immersion, and we were closer to the screen, and we felt more into it. And then in the 2010s, LCD panels became standard and cheap, and they rolled out everywhere. And now in the 2020s, we're seeing virtual reality as the next display technology that is being adopted by our industry. And it starts slow and it rolls out. And it's a bit inevitable. And that's about immersion. People want better immersion. And when people start getting used to VR, 2D screens on an LCD are not going to be enough. Just not going to satisfy them. And so for those of you that haven't seen Meow Wolf yet, which is at Area 15. I highly recommend you log on right now to your smartphone and grab a ticket while you're in Vegas and see it. A, because it's amazing, and B, I think it's a glimpse of the future of what's coming in our industry. Now, Omega Mart is this immersive, it's a combination of kind of like an immersive grocery store and art museum and an entertainment center, and I don't know what else. It's beyond categorization, but the reviews are off the charts. They opened in a pandemic. They're selling out like crazy. They're about to open, Meow is about to open a new permanent installation in Denver in the coming weeks. And so it's really the future of this immersion. People are raving about it and they're really loving it. And VR does that. Now, recently, I don't know if there's any zombie fans in the crowd. I'm a massive zombie fan. Movie on Netflix called Army of the Dead from Zack Snyder, who did the whole DC Universe thing, famous Hollywood director. And Zack just released with Netflix. Netflix is producing a location-based VR attraction that's going to be touring around the world. Check this out.
I'm so excited to finally announce that this summer we're taking Army of the Dead on the road. Behind me is no ordinary taco truck. Tucked deep inside this behemoth is a virtual reality experience like no other. This summer you get to join the Los Vengeance team as we give you the opportunity to put on a headset, pick up a weapon, and go behind enemy lines in a truly immersive experience to bring home some Vegas survivors. For more information on cities, dates, and how to book your seat.
Now, this is touring in, I think it's like, I don't know, 20 cities over 5 different countries. It's in LA, I think, coming up this month, and it's going to go to New York, and then it's going to tour around. And in essence, what this is in the pandemic, we saw 50% of fans said they went deeper into their fandom. And so Netflix has hired Greg Lombardo, former head of attractions at Fox Studios and Fox Next, to spin up a location-based entertainment attractions division. And this is their second now immersive entertainment from Netflix. So you're seeing the studios bringing this IP out into the world, into the market, to allow fans to connect with the properties and the experiences they love. And for those of you that think zombie shooters are dead, I would beg to, and I think Zack Snyder would beg to differ as well. Now, recently, Zero Latency here in Australia launched a game in conjunction with Ubisoft and Endream Studio in the UK based on their Far Cry franchise, which was massive. And I actually just got to play it this week in Melbourne.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
The definition of insanity is running a virtual event from 8,000 miles away. Oh, sorry. And so what Ubisoft did is they hired a well-known developer, and this is the first game that I've seen that has a major studio that creates major content for VR platforms and non-VR platforms, and then a AAA publisher, Ubisoft, combined with a location-based VR company, other than The Void, sorry, kudos to them, to create a real free roam thing based on a first-person shooter. So it's not just based on an IP license, it's taking the game and bringing it into a warehouse scale. I played it. I'll be posting a review of this game in the coming weeks, so I don't want to spoil that. But anyway, so we're seeing more and more stuff come from studios across the threshold kind of into our industry. And so what's this all mean to you, right? I mean, we're going to see big money. We're seeing big money come into the industry. We're seeing Private equity Fund Lab down here in Australia was just bought by TPG Group, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, private equity firm in the world. We're seeing like money sniff around. We saw this in the 90s with Block Party and McDonald's getting in and stuff like that. And so we'll see how it plays out, because it doesn't always actually work when big money comes into our industry. But they're coming in with a real keen interest on immersive technology, and specifically right now, virtual reality, which is kind of the way a lot of people are bringing these experiences to market. And so it's really important to stay on top of this stuff, because it's coming, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, whether you believe in it or not, it doesn't matter. It's coming and it's inevitable. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means and how we're seeing that play out a little bit in technology in the market. So the first thing, I don't like to talk about the technology because the technology generally isn't that important. There has been there's been a development, a release of a new product. It's coming. I was hoping to have mine by now. It's on its way. I'll have it this week and I'll post a review of it. But this is the new HTC Vive Focus 3. This is an all-in-one headset from HTC, and the Vive Pro is what you see on most VR arcade products, right? And it's tethered to a computer, and you have lighthouses that can be interfered with, and you got to worry about blah, 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 all this stuff. So the Vive Focus 3 eliminates all of that. So it uses the Qualcomm XR2 chipset, which is the same chipset that the Quest uses. It's got a 5K display. So Quest is just under 4K. So it's got a 5K display. And instead of an 89 degree field of view, which is what determines how far you can see, it expands the field of view to 120 degrees, which is really big. It's a big deal. It's a 30% increase in field of view. It's got a magnesium alloy frame. It's got a swappable battery. It's got magnetic removable faceplates for cleaning. And I just want to give the kudos to the team at HTC, and specifically Dave Myers, who's the head of location-based VR product manager for HTC, for listening to the market and getting our feedback integrated into this product, and then the product back out to us, because I think this is going to be a game changer for our industry. The early reviews are just coming out. They've been really positive. It's inside-out tracking, so you don't need tracking cameras. You don't need a computer. Everything sits inside the headset. And so I think you're going to see this as the next piece of kit that we wind up building location-based attractions on. It might take 6 months or a year for it to make it into the attractions ultimately, but I'm really excited about the HTC Vive Focus 3. It's way more expensive than the Quest, right? You can buy a Quest consumer version for $300. The Quest Business Edition, which is just different software, is $800. This is north of $1,000, but it's specifically designed for commercial B2B use. And I think we're going to see it, and I think we're going to love it. I hope. Fingers crossed. And so what we're going to talk a lot about today in the coming panels and keynotes is attractions. Like VR, one of the things I see is a lot of operators are buying VR arcade games. They're plopping them down. They're treating them like arcade games, which makes sense. They kind of look like arcade games. They're expensive. And we run arcades. So that's kind of what we do, right? Give, what is it? Everything to a hammer looks like a nail. And I think that, and I don't want anybody to there's nowhere bad to be on this graph. I want to say that. So those of you in the room that are going to be offended by where I might put your product segment or your market segment or whatever on the graph, chill out. There's nothing wrong with being anywhere on this graph, right? Some of these products, coasters, for example, I recommend VR Rabbids to a lot of people for a lot of time. It's a great product, right? I don't know how much replay value the coasters have. I don't know. Haven't seen any statistics. Give me some statistics. I'll change my opinion. But it's kind of an experience. They haven't been gamified much yet. Yeah, you wave your hands. That's more attract mode to get people looking at the game and wanting to play it than anything else. They're not highly gamified, right? And so they're more experiences. And they're small, so they're not really attractions. You're not going to build your business. You're not going to get people to get off the couch, go and drive in a car, park in your place, and go just to ride a 3-minute virtual coaster ride, Rabbids, Kong, Storm, whatever, right? None of them. And then we have video games, right? Which are things like the Eunice motorcycle game, the Cyber Motorcycle Racer VR game, and the VR Beat Saber game, and the Star Wars game, and these are more arcade games that, again, not necessarily attractions, right? They're arcade games, and we treat them as such. And then on the right, in the bottom right, we've got like things like the Void, which were attractions but had no replay value whatsoever, right? They were one and done. You play them, and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to play that again. There's no sense of agency and control and reason to try to level up. And then really the question is, how do we get here? How do we get in that top right where we have high replay value and we have attractions that people are willing to get off their couch for? And this afternoon, we're going to bring you a marketing panel. But on that panel is a guy named Mark. Or is it Mark's? Oh shit, I'm so bad with names, and he's gonna kill me. And it's Brad Mark, 2 first names. That always throws me. And Brad runs Pole Position Raceway. He's the COO of Pole Position here in Vegas, or there in Vegas. And he's installed the Virtuix Omni Arena, and he's going to talk about how he's turned that into an attraction. And it's actually, he's advertised it, and he's going to be he brings people in, and his business has gone up 40%. We're going to be talking about how do we position these things differently to get people off the couch, because they are willing to do that. And the other thing we're going to be talking about today is like some of these hyper reality effects that are coming in. So I want to call it the Vex. They were really early in this, and they did a really good job with this. I think they call this the Vex Adventure, and it has heat, and it has wind, and it has a vibrating floor, and it has vibrating vests. And they built what I thought was a Void-like experience and put it in a package that looked like HoloGate. And operators looked at this and went, oh, it looks like a really expensive HoloGate. I probably can only charge $8 or $10 for it, and it's 130 grand or whatever, and there's no way I'm going to get my money back, and the throughput and da-da-da-da-da. What they didn't see was this is actually a Void which costs $1 million for 135 grand. And I know guys at Fireloop OC in Orange County that are charging $20 for this or $25 for it because it's an amazing full haptic adventure. It's an attraction. We're going to hear today from James Jensen, who's the former CTO and one of the co-founders of the Void, and his new business called Jump, which is virtual frickin' wingsuit diving. I can't wait to do this. It's been
proven that the majority of people in the world have had a dream of flying. Join the Jump Squad and experience something that you've always dreamt of. Our one-to-one wingsuit simulation enables you to jump and enjoy this feeling of human flight without any of the physical risks.
Now, they're going to open their first location at American Dream Mall in New Jersey, in the Meadowlands, later this year, and they're already selling tickets, by the way, like months in advance, which is really smart. We're also going to hear from Matt Wells today from Front Grid. Some of you might be familiar with the original Paradrop VR, which was kind of a big attraction. They've worked on a version 2 of that, and I don't want to spoil too much of Matt's thunder, but it has gamification elements in it. It has an app in it. It has global leaderboards. And so they're trying to get into that top right quadrant where you have this, hang gliding experience that's also highly gamified. And we're also going to hear from Michael Bridgman from Major Mega, which makes the Hyperdeck, which is another kind of big attraction that they've gamified. And they're trying to fight for that top right-hand quadrant with repeat play and gamification techniques and stuff. And this has heat and wind and a massive moving floor. And again, really, really a massive attraction that people hopefully will be willing to get off the couch and come to your location for. And so, and this is Brad Mark. This is his facility. And he advertises this thing. Now, Vegas is a tourist market, and he advertises the Omni Arena across all of these tourist platforms. And I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit more. And so if you're not getting my blog, shame on you. BobCooney.com is where I write about all this shit all the time. I try not to spam you too much. I do send out some emails on behalf of shows and events that I do, and an occasional thing that might be from a sponsor, but I try to keep it to a minimum. But anyway, BobCooney.com, subscribe to the blog. You'll get lots of cool stuff.